Hey, how you doing, folks? It's a beautiful, beautiful June evening here, early June, and we're gonna do a little video that some of you might find a little bit boring, but rest assured, this is important to understanding the context of a number of different things, both the anatomy of ferns, the origin of vascular plants. Some important species, locally, some common species, like a number of concepts I'm going to hopefully convey to you in what should be a relatively concise video. So I'll cut to the chase. What we're going to look at today, and we'll get into the actual, things I want to discuss with us, but what we're going to look at today is hopefully, I think I should be able to provide this, three closely related and very, very old in terms of lineage species of fern. We're going to be looking at three ferns in the family Osmundaceae, which is the sole family in the fern order Osmundales. So I'll jump right into it with this. Osmundales is the most basal, I guess you could say most quote-unquote ancient lineage of what we refer to as Leptosporangiate ferns. Okay, so these are ferns that are your typical bracken fern, your polypodes, your brakes, and of course that also includes a number of more unusual clades of fern, like your cyathiales, your tree ferns, your what am I thinking of? Schizoales, which has Gaylussacia in it, your climbing ferns. I digress, but all of these ferns, these so-called highly evolved Leptosporangiate ferns, all basically do one thing in common. They all have their spore-bearing, or spore-producing, I should say, organs, their sporangia, arising from one cell on their epidermal tissue. Now, your three more basal clades of fern, your rattlesnake ferns, your grape ferns, Ophioglossum fern clade, your meradioid fern, your potato ferns, and then your don't fail me now, your equisetum, your horsetail ferns. Those are all really cool, really interesting too. Those broke off, before the evolution of the Leptosporangiate fern. I'll put a nice little family tree on there so you understand. It's like how when you get your dumb uncle who denies evolution being a thing, how he goes, well, if humans evolved from monkeys, how are there still monkeys? It's that whole, we didn't evolve from chimps. We have a shared common ancestor. It's that whole thing. These didn't evolve from, and by the way, those three, polyphyletic clades of fern, are all referred to as Usmundaceae ferns. They have their spore-bearing organs arising from multiple cells of epidermal tissue. You can't really observe that difference, without a microscope, but you can sure as hell tell that you spend enough time around equisetum, you spend enough time around, moonworts and rattlesnake ferns, and you spend enough time around potato ferns, which we don't get any of those in New England. We do get, Botrachium, Ophioglossum, and obviously equisetum. You could tell they're different. I'll just leave it there. So they share a common ancestor with the Leptosporangiate ferns, which are right in front of us, but these broke off the most recently. That's what we that's how we basically call it. So in front of me right now is Osmunda regalis. This is the royal fern, and this guy here has some real interesting fronds that almost don't even look fern-like. You could maybe, look kind of like a palm or something, but rest assured, you follow one of these, fronds down to the base, the whole thing is just basically one broad fern frond. There's actually two of them here. And by the way, this guy down here, that's Onoclea sensibilis. We're not going to talk about that today, but that is another, Leptosporangiate fern. So, Osmundaceae, Osmundiales, all of these, for the most part, are dimorphic ferns. We're going to look at one in a bit that's going to appear to not be a dimorphic fern, but it is basically meaning that they are sending up their spore. I guess this one does have vegetative leaves coming off of the sporophyte here, the sporophyll, if you would. So here's the spores. Those are the reproductive parts. How ferns basically work is you get an alternation of generations. These are the spores here. Get some on my finger there. These will fall off, hit the ground. They germinate not into another fern that looks like this, but into something called a gametophyte. The gametophyte will either make an archegonium or a antheridium. I think I'm getting that right. And basically those are going to produce the sperm or the egg cell. Those are going to the sperm's going to fertilize the egg, and what's going to happen then is that entity, not a gamete. So those are the gametes, the sperm and the egg combined. They produce what's known as a sporophyte. That's this stage of fern right here. That's what you're looking at in the lens. This is what grows up to be the main organism, the free living organism, and that's how they basically do their thing. The spore doesn't hit the ground and automatically just become a fern. It's got to do a little. There's another life stage. It's almost microscopic. So Osmundaceae generally does this. You have some of them. They call them flowering ferns, royal ferns. I like the royal fern as the common name for the family there. But they often are called flowering ferns because they really do have just very, very distinctive and easy to recognize sporophytes on them. So this is a clade of fern that broke off seemingly. It was like the late Permian, so well before the dinosaurs were kicking around doing their thing, did this clade of fern, the broader Leptosporangiate clade of ferns, break off from the rest of the fern lineage. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's about just a little under, 300 million years ago. I almost said 400. I can double check. I'm going to go with just under 300 million years ago was the end of the Permian, beginning of the Cretaceous. That is the That's the end of the. I'm going to have to go back and double check my geologic time scale. If I'm not mistaken, the Permian was either the end of, I don't know, whatever, going into the Paleozoic. The Paleozoic was the Cretaceous, Jurassic, and Triassic. At least I know that for sure. Anything else to say? Or maybe that was the Mesozoic. I'll correct myself. It doesn't really matter for this. 300 million years ago, well before the evolution of flowering plants, these magnificent, beautiful ferns, which have not changed much in their morphology, were beginning to evolve. We're beginning to diversify. Now you have, maybe a few dozen species left over. But we'll go talk about some other ones, and I'll kind of split up the details because this is a long time to look at a static shot. We'll go look at one of the other species, and we'll get a little bit into the interesting distribution, or at least modern day distribution of this fern clade. Osmunda, Regalis, the royal fern or American royal fern, I'm not sure. We'll go check on another one right now. Okay, now here's one I've definitely addressed on the channel at least a few times. This is actually a pretty unimpressive specimen of this. These things can get huge. This guy is just hanging on. This is kind of the end of the real showy season for him. If I really felt like it, I could take you into the woods and show you a more impressive one down where they get a swampy section, but I got the other species I'm going to cover right over here, and that'll be that. This is Osmundastrum cinnamomeum. Back up for just a second so you can kind of get the scale of it. They could get much larger than this, but this will suit our purpose for now. So you can see what I'm talking about there. These are starting to wither for the season, but this is, imagine this would be much more upright, kind of in its peak season, like this, sticking straight up. These are the sporophytes for this particular species. Now, as you can see, Osmundastrum, unlike his close cousin Osmunda, and you'll see this with the other species of Osmundastrum we're going to look at in 1 second here, has, I guess you could say more traditional looking pinnae to the leaf there. Still, coming up from the ground, just, there's no real branching to it. I guess you could say that this is just pinnate, whereas we just so happen to have one next door to us, the Osmunda Regalis is bipinnate, and what I mean by that, we'll just do a little real quick, just quick and dirty fern terminology for you. So pinnate refers to this frond is all one leaf, and it has these leaflets coming off. You'd say that is pinnate. Bipinnate. So again, right here, this is all one leaf, emerges from the bottom. So then it splits, so that would be bipinnate, pinnate, but then you have the leaflets come off of this. This is a rachis, this is a rachella, this is a pinna, whatever. This would be bipinnate, this is just pinnate. So good, useful trick to remembering the difference between Osmunda and Osmundastrum. The other species of Osmundastrum we're going to see one second is also simply pinnate. I could be butchering that. I don't think I am. It doesn't really matter that much. This species I'm going to use to convey another lesson to you, which is the weird modern distribution of these things. You got to remember, these guys have been around hundreds of millions of years, relatively unchanged. The continents have shifted around a lot since then. But you will find this exact species not only distributed here in the eastern United States and I think southeastern Canada, but you will also find this exact species in eastern Asia, Japan, China. I think it is especially abundant in like upland Taiwan. And I can only speak for Osmundastrum cinnamomeum right now, talking about that, but I do believe that Osmundastrum, the claytoniana, the one we're going to go look at right now, also does that as well. Osmundastrum cinnamomeum right here, the so-called cinnamon fern. Unlike Osmunda regalis, you'll note that there's no green vegetation at all on these sporophytes. It doesn't differentiate. You will see that the fertile fronds, on Osmundastrum claytoniana, do have some green on them too. We'll go look at that species right now. Okay, and here you go. This is going to be our third and final species. This is actually all three species in this family native to New England. This is Osmundastrum claytoniana. This is the so-called interrupted fern. And where this fern gets its name from is the fact that you can very clearly see on this sporophyte, which is in fact the fertile frond, you get vegetation, sorry, right here. These are the spores right here. Well, they're kind of withered now, but you get the idea. And then some more vegetation. However, on the fronds, right next to it, no such interruption is occurring. So, Osmundastrum claytoniana, Osmundastrum cinnamomeum, and Osmunda regalis. The three species of Usmundaceae we get in New England. I'll do my double check. I think that this one is also one that you get in East Asia. I will double check. I'm not sure about the European distribution of this particular lineage of ferns, but they're very common, very dominating ferns. These are small ones just based on where they're growing. We'll go do a little walk around. The lighting's okay. I'll show you what they look like in a habitat where they can get big. There's a wetland adjacent to here, but these ones are in fact growing kind of stunted. I just picked this location because you get all three of them growing together, which they kind of like. I see them grow in what appears to be full sun pretty often, but then you take a step back and you realize, much like where we are now, they can take a lot of morning sun, but they don't seem to like the afternoon sun. So right here it gets a ton of sun in the morning. I know because I've been here 1.5 million times, but as you can see right now, it's fairly dim. So that is my dissertation on Usmundaceae, the only family in the order Osmundaceae, the most basal lineage of Leptosporangiate fern. If that's not interesting to you, I mean, that's frankly your problem, but it's very interesting to me, and it's nice to be able to see all three of them, the variations that they have. Just pretty interesting. For whatever reason, Osmundastrum claytoniana seems to be the least infrequently encountered one, and Osmundastrum cinnamomeum seems to be the most encountered one for me. I'm not sure why that is. They all pretty much share the same distribution and habitat, at least in the northeastern United States. So I'm going to have to put a few addendums in this video, I'm sure. Just, you know, pay attention to the little subtitles at the bottom. Hopefully it didn't go over your head. I've gotten really into ferns in general, and just in the last couple of weeks got really into this family. So on that note, I'm going to go show you one quick thing that has absolutely nothing to do with ferns, just because it's a cool plant that has a funny name, and we'll be done for this evening. Yeah, you see there? Actually, not really there. More so on the edge here. That's all Symphocarpus fluidus out there. Here on the edge of this, you get a feel for how big these things get and what their preferred habitat is. This is all mostly Osmundastrum cinnamomeum, but you get some interrupted ferns in here and a handful of the royal ferns. So this is much more typical of where you would expect to see them. You come by here a few months ago, there would be no overstory here because this is all predominantly deciduous, and these guys would have had, you know, full sun for quite a while during the first phase of their season. So let's go look at a Dangleberry. I'm sure you're dying to look at a Dangleberry. Okay, just because it's here, and I'm not sure when I'm going to have another chance to talk about it, and it is a cool plant. Somewhat limited in distribution. I'll put the little distribution map up there right now. You get a cool species of huckleberry. So I know I said, oh, it's a Dangleberry. It is Dangleberry. That is the common name. But blue huckleberry is also one of the other common names. Get up in there. You can see the flowers, well ursulate, look a bit different than your traditional, you know, your vaccinium flowers. They're a little bit shorter, not quite as pinched at the end. Still got the, you know, trademark ursulate corolla that you would expect from this family, which is Ericaceae. Unlike the more common and widespread Gaylussacia frondosa is the scientific name of the species. Unlike the much more common and widespread Gaylussacia baccata, the black huckleberry, this one's got white flowers. That one has a narrower, almost like dark purple, whitish blue. I don't know how to describe them. I'll put a reddish purple flowers. I'll put a picture up of what Gaylussacia baccata looks like. Berries on this are blue when they're ripe, and then the berries on Gaylussacia baccata would be black when they're done. Foliage, I mean, looks pretty darn similar. Back up a little bit, show you what the actual whole plant looks like. Kind of get that typical, you know, ericaceous growth form. Likes the shaded mesic woodlands. You know, makes these nice thickets. Doesn't really get as tall as Vaccinium corymbosum can, which you definitely get in here, which can get, you know, damn near arborescent, but you know, but roughly the same size as Gaylussacia baccata. And you know, you look at those berries there ripening, and you can kind of immediately, just as somebody who grew up in New England, or if you grow blueberries, you can kind of get the sense those are a little bit different looking than blueberries. Allegedly, this is quite delicious, you know, when these do ripen up. I know, you know, regular huckleberries can be a little bit bitter and tart for some people. These dangleberries, you know, tasty, put them in your mouth. Dangleberries are supposed to be a little bit more, you know, palatable, but plenty of people like the black huckleberries too. So you get another species of Gaylussacia in New England that's basically restricted to the coast. I can't remember the name of right now, but that's not important because we came here to talk about ferns. I just think the common name Dangleberry is absolutely hilarious. Sorry I couldn't get the flowers in better light for you, but it is what it is. Gaylussacia frondosa, the Dangleberry. Cute little flowers on it though, huh? What do you get, porous anthers in there? You get the same type of anthers as Vaccinium does? Looks like it. Little porous anthers up in there. Technically a 5-petaled flower. Ericaceae. Anyway, that's about all I got for you. Hopefully you got at least one or two things out of that. If you don't find ferns, oh yeah, now I'm finding all sorts of, still some good flowers on this. Past peak bloom, but still some good flowers on it. If you don't like ferns, hopefully you, like me, find the name Dangleberry to be quite whimsical. And yeah, I'll leave it basically there. Have a good one, guys.